Wow, wow, wow. That was Marcus Morton, Chicago native, singing Mighty and Great Are You, Lord. So we are excited because we do serve a mighty and a great God. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Self Checkout tonight. As you come in, as we do every week, say hello, let us know that you're here. We want you to like, love, and share. If you're viewing us on Facebook, thank you. We want those likes, those hearts, and those shares from you tonight. And if you're viewing by way of Periscope, we want the hearts there too. Thank you for joining us on Periscope. Thank you guys that's on Twitter and you that are watching live on YouTube. Thank you for watching. Those of you that will watch this replay, we want you to know that we appreciate you too. Thank you for joining us tonight on Self Checkout. This is where we take an honest look at what's in our hearts, our minds, and our spirits. Tonight, we are on our second week of our series, All in the Family. And ladies and gentlemen, there are things like depression, fear, anxiety, grief, abandonment, rejection. Those are all things that we deal with. Some people deal with on a daily basis, and we go through life every day acting as if everything is all right. But when we get behind closed doors, we have to face the harsh reality that even those of us who are saved still deal with some of these things. We've been scarred. No one can see it, but we live with it every day. Tonight, we're talking about the scars that no one can see. And we want to welcome tonight my esteemed guest. Oh my God, y'all don't know how excited I am to have these women on Self Checkout tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, put some hearts up on the screen for my sisters. I call them my sisters. Pastor Gail Rice and Apostle Sharon Peters, they are here with us tonight. Pastor Gail, how are you?
I am well. I am well. So glad to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. Looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. Glad to have you. Apostle Sharon, good evening.
Good evening to you, Pastor. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much. I want you all to know that Bishop Al Reese and I, we talk about y'all a lot.
Wow.
Okay.
So we just love you guys so much. I've seen videos, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to steal some of their notes. But it is definitely a delight to have you all on tonight. And I'm spirit-led when I invite guests to my show, and I believe that I have the right women of the fivefold ministry on this show tonight to help us discuss the scars that we cannot see. I want to say good evening to those of you who are already on and commenting. Hello, Danielle, one of my biggest supporters, and my mom, who is definitely my greatest cheerleader. Good evening. Thank you for sharing, Danielle. Everybody else, we do want you to share this video. Good evening to Kimberly White. Belinda Hawkins is on. Thank you. I think she's with Apostle Sharon. Good evening. Pastor Gregory Huggins. Hey. My bonnet is on, Charnel. I call her bonnet. That's an inside joke. So glad she could be here with us tonight. Thank you all. Thaddeus, man, hey, how are you? Thank you all for joining. Again, like, love, share. That's what we want to do tonight as we get started. And of course, before we get into the meat of the matter, let's have a little fun with our top choice question tonight. And I want to ask both of you all to answer. If you're having a party or any type of big event for yourself, and one of your friends ends up getting engaged at your party, would you be upset about that? That's our top choice question tonight, and we want all of you all to chime in. Would you be upset if your best friend got engaged at your party or your engagement or your wedding? Let's hear it. Pastor Gail, how would you feel about that?
See, you just took it to another level. You just said your party. I don't have a problem with the party. If it's I have a get together or a party at my house And my girl, her guy is he engaged, proposes to her, and there's a captive audience. I don't have a problem with that, but please don't do that at my wedding. Don't do that at my engagement party. I've been married a good while now, so I'm getting ready to have a milestone wedding anniversary. Don't be doing that at my anniversary. Stage your own party, okay? I'm just gonna leave it at that. I would hope I got 5 real good girlfriends, 5 of them, and they know me well enough. Don't be doing that. Don't do that.
Apostle Sharon, how you feel about that? I'm kind of with my little sister. Don't steal my thunder.
Don't steal
my thunder. If it's my special day, let it be my special day. Y'all get engaged tomorrow.
Let me tell you all, I was watching a show. I was watching the Braxton Family, and one of the sisters, it was Tamar, I believe it was her birthday party. And if anybody knows Tamar, she's over the top, big personality and everything. And her sister's boyfriend proposed to her at Tamar's party, and Tamar got mad. She got up, walked out. She was like, forget all of this. I think she was like, Apostle Sharon, y'all do this tomorrow. This is my night. So that was my question, and I thought that was funny. So I want to know what you guys feel about it. That's viewing all over. Let me know whether you like that idea or not. Would you get upset if your best friend got engaged at your wedding or your engagement? Yeah, I don't know. Good evening to Brother Marcus is on. Yes, we played your song tonight. We are so excited about the ministry that is coming forth through you, and you all can go to any streaming site and purchase Mighty and Great from my friend and my brother Marcus Morton. iTunes, Amazon, wherever it's available, you can get that song. Let's see here. What are you all saying in these comments? Danielle said, oh no. She is not having it. Let's see. She also says the preacher in me is like, oh, cute, but the me in me is like, don't do it. Oh, my mom said, keep it to yourself until later. So I think everybody's on your side, Apostle Sharon and Pastor Gail. Charnel said she agrees. She said exactly, yeah. So let's see. Pastor Greg said, please wait till we give the benediction.
Wait till we get in my limo and we drive off.
Oh my goodness! I want to say good evening to my leaders who are on. They on just about every week when they can be. Good evening, Dr. Curtis and Linda Stennis, my apostles. So glad to have them, of course. And Marcus has put his website up. You can go right there. It's on the screen, www.marcusgmorton.com, to purchase any and all of his music. He has some big stuff coming up really, really, really soon. All right, so I'll be putting more comments up as we continue, but I do want to get into the heart of the matter tonight, and that's the reason that we are here. I sent, and I'm gonna pull it up really quickly, because when I sent you ladies the last email for the show tonight, I sent it with a quote. I started it with a quote. And that quote said, and it's from Rachel Shade. It says, I'd never known that I could feel this broken and whole at once. And I saw that and I said, wow. This quote, this young lady is saying that she's living her life broken and whole at the same time. And I thought about that. I said, that's really, really important to our discussion tonight, because that is where many people are in their life. They're broken, but every day they have to carry on in life as if nothing is wrong. And there are so many things that happen to us in life, whether it was today, yesterday, and sometimes we even discussed that a little bit last week when we talked about anger and bitterness. Um, Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is all in the family month. So everything that we're talking about, it also relates to our own families too. There are so many issues that we deal with and have been dealing with for years, Pastor Gail, on a daily basis. But when it's time to, when, as they say, when it's go time, we have to put that face on. Everything's fine. Everything's okay. I'm good. And I said that even on Facebook as I was sharing about the show. And I want to hear from you, Pastor Gail, about this quote, being broken and being whole at the same time. I said that we've mastered the I'm okay syndrome.
So
I'm good.
I understand that journey of being broken in the church, you know, being a church girl at that time, singing in the choir, singing under the power of God, but leaving church and going home to an abusive relationship, abusive marriage, but had to come home, come back to church week after week as though things were fine, right? At that time, there was no place in the church where you could bring that kind of hurt. There was nowhere you could talk about that kind of hurt. The family I had married into was a prominent family in that church. So bringing that pain, you know, I had to mask it, but was wounded. I'm not sure I understand being wounded and whole at the same time, because I don't know if I've walked that journey before. I know I've tried to walk out being whole. I've put on a facade of trying to be whole, but I was still scarred. Matter of fact, festering wounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those wounds don't become scars until the wound heals.
Yeah.
So trying to walk out that journey of my wounds healing, that was a painful journey. Not only dealing with domestic violence at home, but also substance addiction, trying to deal with the pain of what I was going through. So I had this double whammy, and the shame that came along with it, and all the physical scars, because it was fights going on, right?
Okay. All right.
And if you look at my lip right here on this side, there's a scar, and every time I look at that on my lip, it reminds me of that time. But it's not bleeding no more. Come on here, somebody. It's healed.
Yeah. It's healed.
It's just a scar of what it was. So I understand that journey. And now being a minister, a pastor in the church, trying to help other people walk that journey. My big sister who is here, she has a word that she always uses, and it's continue. You know, we seek deliverance, we seek healing in the church. But then we find ourselves still wounded, and we wonder why. We've got to continue in that deliverance. So I'm still trying to understand what the author means, or the quote, being broken and whole at the same time, because I've always been I was trying to find a place of wholeness. I guess that means I was broken, but constantly seeking wholeness. Maybe.
Okay.
You know, I don't know.
Apostle Sharon, let me put this on the screen, and maybe this can kind of help all of us understand a little bit more. This was my take from that quote. And this is our first question for tonight. And I want to go back to a comment that I saw a few minutes ago. Someone actually, I think her name is Jennifer. She said, it was Jennifer. She said, yes, the I'm okay syndrome. She's guilty. And our question tonight, our first question is, we say it's okay to not be okay, but we seemingly have mastered the I'm okay syndrome. And I want to go to Apostle Sharon here. Why do we give that response when we know it's not true?
Well, if I could just deflect back a little bit about the quote that was made.
Yes, please.
When I saw that quote, I've mastered being broken and yet whole. What I wrote down, that sounds like an anomaly to me. It's kind of like being in the world but not of the world.
Okay.
And we know that is something that even believers of today is trying to master, how to be
Right.
in what they're not of. And so that reminded me of the same thing, that anomaly. And I think, and the word I wrote down when she said, how can I be so broken and yet be whole? One of the things I think is that a lot of people master holding it together. Holding it together. Just imagine something, a vase. I have this vase here. Just imagine breaking the vase, but taking all the pieces and holding it together. And so it can look like it's together, but the moment I release myself from holding myself together, that is where you would see the broken pieces.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are very good. When Jennifer said, I'm okay, I'm okay. A lot of people say that because in their estimate, they are okay because they are holding themselves together. But if they move themselves out of the way, they would see the broken pieces. And a lot
Yes.
of people hold it together. A lot of people have the I'm okay syndrome, I think, Pastor, because they have great responsibilities. Maybe they have responsibilities as a leader, and I can't afford. I've said that in my life in times past. I don't say that anymore, but in times past, I've said I can't afford to fall apart. I can't afford to break down. I can't afford to do this because of the great responsibility, because of the whole line of people that are depending on me to keep it together. I had a girlfriend say to me many, many years ago, I felt like I was like at the end of my rope or something. And she said, you got to hang on, girlfriend. She was like, because if you fall, it'll be like a domino effect on us. We all gonna fall. That to me, I mean, that didn't really help me, but it
That's a
said to
huge
me,
responsibility.
yeah, it said to me, geez, that's a huge responsibility. So when I looked at her quote, I looked at a person that's saying, I'm broken, but I'm holding it together. And she's calling holding it together whole, but holding it together is not whole.
It's,
It's not.
it makes me think about, so I talked about being in the circumstance I was in, and that's been many, many years. I would come to church, listen to this, with this I'm okay syndrome, right? I would come to church with sunglasses on, with the black eye behind the sunglasses, standing in the choir, singing like I'm okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And bet nobody better ask me what's going on. Even I had put a wall up around myself because I didn't want anybody, because if you started chipping away at what was really going on, you would get to the real story of what's happening.
Yeah.
And we don't want people. How many of us grew up in homes that said what goes on here stays here?
Yeah.
So we're conditioned to walk out the front door of our houses, whether it's violence or it's incest, it's rape, depression. We have been conditioned to walk out our front doors by our mamas, our grandmothers, told us what goes on here stays here. And you better not say nothing about it when you leave here. You walk out the door conditioned to put on this face that everything is fine, but on the inside, eventually you're gonna hit a brick wall. Eventually you're gonna break down, right? And I wrote down a quote that says, from every wound there is a scar, and every scar has a story. So I got I got a scar on my forehead from when I was 6 years old. You got to look real close now. That scar has a story of my friend taking me by my feet and turning around, swinging me around. You know how I used to swing around? But she took me by my feet. And as she turned, she kept moving and my head slammed into a car. I have a scar from where my dog bit me. Every one of those scars has a story, right? I can tell you what happened for that scar. But guess what? The scar, they have faded. Hallelujah. They have faded. You can't see them now. You got to look real close. And in order for the wound to become a scar, there has to be a process of healing. A process of healing. Our bodies, when we get cut or when we get scarred or we get cut or whatever, our body automatically goes into healing mode. The blood starts to coagulate, right? So that the cut will start healing automatically. The blood event, it should stop within a few minutes or a few days. Mm-hmm. But on the inside, we don't have that automatic response.
Right.
It's still an open wound.
Yes.
And not only that, I have a saying, scars don't hurt, but scabs do. Scars don't hurt. You could press my scab, my scar. We like Sis Gail said, all of us got scars. All of us got scars, and the scars do tell a story of how we got that wound. But I always say scars don't hurt, but scabs can hurt, and scabs can be re-injured. And you pull the scab out. The scab is on its way, that it's taking that wound through a process of being healed. But if you irritate that scab, something comes along and happened to you again, you're not fully healed. You were on your way, but something happened, and then that scab is ripped off, and then you begin to bleed. So we have to ask ourselves, even when we look at our internal wounds, is it a fresh wound? Is it a scab? Or is it a scar? Because if it's a scar, you can tell the story like Reverend Gail just told. She told the story of what her girlfriend did. She told the story of what happened to her lips. She told the story of what the dog did. But she didn't cry. She didn't cry. She didn't grimace. I pay attention. I've been counseling people for years. And when they start to tell me the story and the tears come and they start crying, and it's not a tear of joy, that's either a fresh wound or it's a scab. Because scars don't hurt, but scabs do. You can't pick at a scab. You pull a scab off, it's another injury.
It makes me think about being re-traumatized, right?
Yes.
So we're in the church. The church is a place of healing. It should be, but a lot of our scars or a lot of our wounds, here it is, happened in the place that we are supposed to find healing, right? And then we come back to church week after week and you get re-traumatized. How do you find healing in a place that you are continually traumatized in? I've been traumatized in the church. I'm not saying the church traumatized me. Let me be clear.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the church traumatized me, but I have experienced trauma in the church. And then as I'm on my way to healing, big sis, there's a scab there. I'm getting there and something else happens and I'm re-traumatized and the scab is pulled back and I'm bleeding all over again.
See, this is why it's important for us to talk about this, because these are all cases in which, especially when we're in leadership, these are all cases where we have to be okay when we're not really okay.
Not okay.
But we keep going, we keep coming, we keep doing. Belinda, good evening, Kimberly White, Belinda, all of you all. Thank you so much for joining us. Belinda says it's like we're putting on a mask. And I thought about that comment when Apostle Sharon said that the young lady told her, if you go down, we all going down. So we have to, kind of, as they say nowadays in this pandemic, mask up. You got to mask up because there are other people watching you. So, we have to, it's a heavy burden to carry sometimes. it's really heavy, because we have to go on, because as if nothing is wrong, and then we just deal with us later. You know what I'm saying? Kimberly says we hold it in a lot of times, and that's very, very true. And as we were coming on, I spoke of a couple of scars that we cannot see, and Shirley hit the nail on the head. She came right in with a couple of those scars. She said, "Yes, my brokenness came from rejection and deception. Who can I run to? Who can I trust? So I isolated by habit, unknowingly to myself, to be made whole and healed." And ladies and gentlemen, those are two things, those are two of the scars, right? That we have to deal with, that we can't see. Rejection, deception. Those are big ones, that can really, really mess people up for a long time. When you've been rejected by your parents, by your family, rejected by a spouse or what have you. And when you've been deceived, it could really mess a lot of people up. Belinda also says that we allow the functions of fear to stop us. That's another scar that we talked about in the beginning, fear. We allow fear to stop us. We have to go to a safe place to heal. So, Pastor Gail, you just spoke about a safe place that should be a safe place. Okay, and you said that in that place,
That particular place,
should
yeah.
have been a safe place, you were re-traumatized over again. So how do we deal with that? How do we live after being broken, after being rejected, deceived, or whatever those scars may be, in the place that you thought you would find healing?
Well, the first thing I had to do was I had to leave that place. I had to leave that place. As hard as it was, I had to leave that place, find another place. Even now, all these years later, I seek out safe space with safe people who I consider safe.
Okay.
Spaces that, and it may not be in a church. Come on here, somebody.
Right.
It may not be in a church, but I seek spaces where I trust the people I'm with, that I can share where I'm really at, right? And I know they're not going to take it and use it against me, because that was a part of the traumatizing, is that I would share my heart. I would share where I was. I would share what I was going through. And then people would turn around and use it against me to let me know how much God didn't love me, and how much I had sinned, and how much I wasn't as saved as I thought I was. It was constantly re-traumatizing. So I had to leave that space and find people I trusted, number one. Number two, I had to go get me a therapist. Come on here, somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had to get a therapist. So between Jesus and my therapist, I got better. Oh, I got healing. I went to every healing service I could go to. But when I got up off the floor, because I was good for hitting the floor, I would hit the floor and lay down there and holler and cry out to God. God, do something. And God says, Gail, you're going to have to do something too.
Wow. Yeah.
You're going to have to do something too. So between me seeking after God as hard as I could, and going to a therapist, and seeking after Jesus, and staying in the word of God, and reminding myself of who God says that I am, I had to remind myself that this is who God says I am. I am fearfully and wonderful made. Every time that person, I almost said something. Every time that person said I wasn't nobody, right, God says that I am.
Yeah.
So it was that process that finally helped me get to the road of healing.
Awesome. Apostle Sharon, I want you to speak to, Danielle made a comment. She said the I'm okay syndrome is also to ensure that we don't get let down by people who say that they care. Talk about that for a moment.
Well, one of the things that, when we have been hurt, when we have been wounded, when we have been injured, what Danielle is speaking of is a tendency that we have that says now, like the other woman, she's holding herself together, as I talk about. Well, what Danielle is speaking of, it is still a situation where we are trying to control the variables or the scenarios that cause us hurt. So what she's talking about is simply building walls of defense that says, I'm not going to let someone else in. Per adventure, they hurt me again. And all of these type of things that we are talking about is our own self idea of how I'm going to heal. And as Gail said, we need a safe place. And you know, you can't expect an abused woman who's being domestically abused to heal in that place where she's being abused. She has to get out of that place. You're going to have to open up to allow someone, you know, you have to start somewhere to trust again. And we are trying to heal ourselves. And that's pretty difficult to do, to heal ourselves. So what a lot of the people are talking about that they did are things that they did that they thought would be protective measures to take so that they won't be re-injured. Let me tell you something. Anything that you injure yourself on, you have a tendency to be very careful with that. If you cut yourself with a knife, the knife cuts you. The next time you pick up a knife, you're careful, or you might not, you'll give it to somebody else to cut. If you fall off a bike, you're going to be hesitant about getting on the bike again. If you've had a bad relationship, you're hesitant about another relationship. All of these things are self-preservation.
Yes.
And that does not work very long. Self-preservation. We need something else. And that's why I think with the church has got to get to a point where we're not just a place for spiritual enrichment, but we have ministry for the whole man. Because you got people, as Gail said, she could still sing in the choir with her glasses on. She could still hit the notes that she was supposed. And just like preachers, they can still preach and do all of that stuff, but still carrying wounds that need to be dealt with from a holistic standpoint. I believe in making my church a safe place. Sometimes people want to come and they say, Apostle, I don't want to do nothing. I am injured. I am wounded. Just let me sit under the word. Let me sit under the word and go home. There's a scripture in the Bible that Jesus got a man delivered. That man, I preached that message, get delivered and go home. That man got delivered. He wanted to go on with Jesus. He wanted to go and do ministry with Jesus. Jesus told him, go home, go home and show that you've been delivered, you know, to your family and all that. If I phantom in my mind, he might have been clowning at home, going off on people. They say, go home. And that's what needs to happen a lot of times. They don't need to be put up to sing. We don't need to pull on their gift.
Yeah.
We need to let them psychologically heal, let their mind be healed, because the wound could be carried in the mind, in the memory, in the conscious, in the subconscious. And all of that takes ministry or service in that particular area.
So while we're talking about being in ministry and leadership and all of that, oftentimes it is a lot of leaders who have to deal with these scars. And that leads me to my next question. And again, good evening to all of you guys that are tuning in. If you have not done so, whatever platform you're watching on, please like and love and share. We need to see hearts on the screen for Pastor Gail and Apostle Sharon. Let's get likes and loves out up there and share this video. Somebody else that you know needs to hear what these women are saying tonight. So, Pastor Gail, leaders often have many scars weighing them down and yet operate in ministry and in business. Is this a good practice?
No, it isn't. We've all, I don't know, maybe, I don't know about the viewers, but we've all experienced a leader who leaks.
Yes.
A leader who leaks, meaning all of their stuff comes out in the pulpit or when they're ministering to people. You almost feel like you're being beat up with the Bible itself, because their issues, whatever it is, comes out as they are ministering. I can recall 4 years ago, I came to Freedom Hillside, where I pastor. My husband and I'm associate pastor, and I had just come out of a pretty traumatic experience in the decision to leave the place I had been for a very long time, practically all my life. And when I got there, I think I sat in the audience. I said, I don't want to do anything. I can't. I think I sat in the audience 5 or 6 months every Sunday crying. I sat in the audience. I listened to the singing. I listened to the preaching. I cried every Sunday because I was so hurt and so broken. But at some point, I felt a lifting where I knew I had been God, as I cried out to God to heal my heart from this hurt, because I didn't want to spew my hurt, spew my pain on the people, because I had been charged with standing up this ministry in the church. And once I finally did stand up this ministry, this women's ministry, there was no ministry to women up at that particular point. I didn't want to spew that on the women. I didn't want to be mad at women and then lead women and be an angry leader. So and the women on the line, I think Jennifer and Kimberly on the line, they can tell you that one of the foundational principles of that ministry when it started was that this place is a safe environment. Mm-hmm. And if I find out that people's stuff is being talked about outside of this room and they weren't here, but they know everything that happened last Saturday, I'm going to ask you not to come back until you're able to not share and go out and talk about what people talk about in here, because this space needs to be trusted space so we can get everybody can't go to a therapist. Mm-hmm. They might not have access. But as a minister, I believe in creating space that is conducive for healing. Whether it is teaching, whether it is deliverance, whether it is going on our knees and tarrying before God, whatever it is creating, and it has to be trusted space that people, first of all, trust me as a leader, and they trust that what's happening in this place won't be shared all over the place.
Absolutely.
No, it's not to answer that question, no, it's not a good practice unless we are at the same time trying to work on our issues, because we all have something going on. Nobody's ever, I think, constantly okay, right? We always have something going on.
Right.
I just think we need to be working it out and having I got Apostle Sharon. I can call her. Mm-hmm. I can call her and talk about, I can get as angry. And this is another thing, we real churchy in the church. I can get as angry as I want to and talk to her. I respect her as the apostle that she is. But she allows me to be who I am, and I can call her with whatever I need to dump to get off of me so that I can be a healthy leader and an okay leader. That when I go back to my church and those women that I'm in charge of, and when I get up in pulpits and all these places that I preach in, I can be as healthy as possible. She's my confidant, one of them.
I think that's amazing. And my apostles said to the both of the stories that you women are telling are important, and it leads to a path of healing for those who are listening. I do have another question, but I want to shift gears for a moment, Apostle Sharon. we're still dealing with these scars that no one can see. Let's talk for a moment briefly about grief. Um, and I'm purposely talking about grief because grief is a funny thing. And it is, in my opinion, one of the biggest scars that uh, we don't wear it where people can see it. That's what we're talking about tonight. And I can share, those of you from my church that are on here, you all know, if you're close to me, you know that within a 7-year span, I lost my only brother. I lost 2 years after I lost him, I lost my only sister. And just September 15th, I lost my dad. Almost 2 years to the date after I lost my sister. And uh, I carried on, carried on, because that's just what I do. I carry on, I go on. It was the I'm okay syndrome, right? And Apostle Sharon, I went to work maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was on a Sunday. I signed up for some overtime since we're not having in-person service. And I was working. Nobody said nothing to me. I work in my own space because we can't be around people because of the pandemic. So we all spread out all over the place. And out of nowhere, I just broke down. It's one of those scars that nobody can see. And it tore me to shreds at about 10 o'clock that Sunday morning. So let's talk briefly, and I'm going to get to the last question that I have. Let's talk briefly about this one. Let's talk about dealing with grief. Talk to us about that, Apostle Sharon.
Well, I'm very much acquainted with grief. However, my because I lost my husband, my first husband of 20 years, the father of my children, in 2008. And it was one of the most devastating days of my life. It is not something I ever thought that I would be a widow at so early. It was devastating. And that wound is a void. And a lot of times, what people experience when losing a loved one or losing you can lose a job of 30 years and feel the void or whatever. But let's stick with it in terms of losing someone that you love, someone that's dear, your sister, your brother, your father, your spouse, or whatever. That wound is a void. You feel it. It is painful. It is hurtful. It passes the time frame of the funeral, the when people gather and all of that. People typically will give you about 2 weeks or 3 weeks of the attention or the care, and you're still left with that void. That pain was one of the most excruciating pains. I remember crying so much at night till my pillow was literally wet. But I remember being up in the daytime, desiring for the nighttime to come just so that I could go to sleep and possibly zonk out of the pain. I didn't take anything, but to just sleep and not feel that pain. And there are a lot of people, especially during this time right now, having to try to process the pain of loss, the pain of loss. And it really, because of my walk with God and my spirituality, I knew that I had to take the medicine that I, as a counselor, because I had done a lot of grief counseling, I knew that I needed to mourn my loss. And that's what you have to give people an opportunity to mourn their loss. Now, grief, the Bible says Jesus, he carried our grief. He bore our sorrow. Grief is a spirit. Grief is really a spirit that capitalizes on your loss. It will literally attach itself to you and take you beyond your mourning process. So I encourage people to cry. I encourage people to mourn in a healthy way.
In a healthy
But
way.
why in a healthy way? Because you can mourn in an unhealthy way. And you need somebody that can recognize when you are now grieving or mourning in an unhealthy way. If you are locking yourself up, if you're isolating yourself, if you don't make it past those 5 stages of grief, depression, the anger, the bargaining, and all of that, if you don't properly go through those stages and you get hung up in one of those stages, then it's not healthy anymore, and you need help. And I have often made myself available to people to take them through grief counseling when I see that they're hung up. Some people can go through it and go well. One of the things that I did not allow myself to do, and that was in the beginning, I felt the strength of God taking me through. I felt the strength of God. I could talk to people on the phone when they called. I could I managed, I was able to do the funeral. I wasn't, I felt the power of God, the strength of God. But I said, that's his strength, Sharon. That's not yours. That's not yours. And then, but I needed my soul, which is where void was. I needed my soul to be attended to and allowed to mourn that loss. And over time, I would talk to the Lord. I wanted to be healed. I really did. People would say things to me, Pastor, like, "Oh, you never gonna get over that. You gonna be sad for the rest of your life." And I wouldn't receive that because I said, I got 2 kids to raise. I can't really be just this like this for the rest of my life. I didn't believe that that was going to be my story. And so I petitioned the Lord. I presented my soul to the Lord to make me whole. And bless God, he did make me whole. And whole should be the goal of every wound, every injury, every hurt, whatever. Whole should be the goal. Not just
Whole should be
healed,
the goal.
but
I like that.
wholeness should be the goal. That means nothing missing, nothing broken. I can talk about this without falling. That means that I don't have any bitterness in my heart. That means that I don't blame God for taking my husband away. I mean, whole should be the goal. That was my goal. And so
Okay.
that's what I have to say about that whole grief and mourning and all of that.
Okay. All right. I want to switch over to Pastor Gail. Um, Thank you for sharing that, Apostle. And I'll be reaching out to you personally because I would like some information on that grief counseling. I would. Thank you. I want to switch back over to Pastor Gail here. Another show that I watch, a lot of times I get ideas. I see you all typing. I love that. Everybody should go ahead and type that in the comments. Whole should be the goal. That was amazing. I gotta quote you on that on Facebook. Everybody needs to hear that. But that thing slapped me upside the head. Whole should be the goal.
Whole should be the goal.
Everybody, if you're watching, wherever you're watching, type that in the comments. Whole should be the goal. Absolutely. So let's switch off here. My last question of the night, and I want to start with Reverend Gail, and then Apostle Sharon. You can come behind her. One of the shows that I watch is Iyanla Vanzant, Fix My Life.
Mhm.
I've always been interested in how she handles people, how she handles families. And she gets to the root of what the situation is, what their scars are. She gets to the root of it, and I like the way she deals with it. And I think because I am who I am, I look at things spiritually and naturally. And naturally, I see what's happening. I see the scars. I see, you know, the breakdowns and where it started. I see the pathologies, all of that. But on the spiritual side, I see a large need for deliverance in a lot of people's lives. And this past Saturday, I think it was this past Saturday, I watched her show, and she was dealing with a mother and their family. But when she was talking to the mother, she got to the point where the woman opened up to her and told her that some really horrible things happened to her when she was 12 years old. And again, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about the scars that no one can see. And excuse me, one of these scars for her was molestation at the age of 12. And Iyanla told her, and the woman is now 47 years old. She's 47. And Iyanla told her that in so many words, she wanted to speak to that little girl, to that 12-year-old, through the 47-year-old woman. So my question to you, I found that interesting. My question to you, Pastor Gail, do you believe that when a child is scarred, that they resort back to that age or that stage when they're triggered as an adult?
So the whole process of going back and talking to your younger self, that is one of the tools that I use, that was used for me to help me in my own healing. But it's one of the tools that I use when I am dealing with other women, right? And other issues that women have. Because at the age of 12, from what you described, that young lady left her 12-year-old self behind, right? Mm-hmm. And she continued to move on. And now she's 47 years old. But that 12-year-old is still stuck back there in that trauma.
Yeah.
So the process, I always ask, what would you tell your younger self? When I was going through my drug treatment, going through a program and all of that, going through the process of overcoming, and just so everybody know, on November 13th, I will today is the 10th? In 3 days, hallelujah, I will have 26 years clean. Somebody say, thank you, Jesus.
That is amazing.
26. But I had to go back to the Gail who got left behind when I started doing what I was doing. I left her behind. That Gail had hopes. That Gail had dreams. That young girl wanted to do some things. That young girl wanted to go some places, right? But I got sidetracked through a series of relationships and behavior. My life continued on. I continued to get older. But that girl who was back there waiting, I was still waiting. So I had to go back. I literally sat a chair in front of me, an empty chair, and talked to myself and said everything I wanted to say to that 15-year-old girl that I left behind. I had to apologize to my 15-year-old self. I had to tell her, sorry that I left you behind. Sorry that happened to you. Sorry. I had to literally go and get her and bring her into my present so that I could become whole and healed. Because as long as my 15-year-old self was back there, I was constantly crying and grieving and regretting the fact that I allowed whatever happened in my life to happen to me, and my younger self got left there. Or sometimes it's right, if people can't go there, I'd say, write a letter to your 15-year-old self. What would you say to yourself now? That's just one of the tools of helping people face the past, to face that, because here I am, as old as I am now. I mean, then I wasn't, I'll be clean 26 years, but 26 years ago, I could not believe. Now I'm a church girl. I'm a church baby. I've been in the church. I grew up in the church. How did I end up in an abusive marriage and using drugs? How did that happen to me? How did I get there? I had to go back, and then I was mad with God. I was like, how you set me up like this, God? You set me up. Because my daddy was alcoholic functional, but he was. So I had to go through a process of healing and a process of dealing with those pathologies you talked about, of family stuff, family trauma.
Absolutely.
And once I went back and started to write my life down, I guess I want to say this too, is that in the church, we spiritualize everything to the point that we can't do the real work that needs to be done on ourselves. We hide under churchy language. We hide under Bible verses. We hide under spiritual language. But there was a process. I had to write my life down and go back and read it and say, oh, that's where that came in at. I had to look at who my father was a wonderful man. Chicago police officer, provider of the family. But I had to look back and take those rose-colored glasses off and see the truth so that I could understand, embrace the truth about myself, so that those were the things I was able to then take to God and say, God, heal me of this family trauma. Heal me of this generational desire for of addiction. It took a lot for me to say that, but we have to do real work, and we can't hide behind churchy spiritual language. And I'm not, some people might get mad at me for saying that, but we get so spiritual that we cannot see the reality of the work that we need to do, because it's really not just about me surviving the trauma I went through, right? Because I went through a lot of trauma. I couldn't even tell it all to you. But it's about me thriving now. Some of us are just surviving. We got over it, we survived, and we stuck in survival.
Right.
Yeah.
And not
but
living.
now our lives need to thrive. And what does thriving look like? It means that I am living into the fullness of who God says that I am. I'm no longer crying when I tell you the story.
Right. Yeah.
I ain't crying no more.
That's key. That's
the
key.
tears are not coming. I might get a little mad when I talk about that other. I'm not crying. I'm not crying anymore. I don't feel down. I don't feel like I've lost anything. I'm not regretful anymore. You know what it is? It's just a part of my story.
Yeah. Yeah. Apostle Sharon, I want to read this comment, and you can pick up where Pastor Gail left off. Elder Jacqueline Knight, thank you for joining. And before I read this comment, please let me say good evening to my sister Tiffany Colley that's on. She has such
a baby girl.
Amazing testimony. I have been loving her for a long, long time, and she's still here. And I thank God for you. Thank you all for being in here tonight. It's never too late to like, love, and share this video. Please do that if you have not done so. Apostle Sharon, Elder Jacqueline Knight says, it happened a lot in the South because it was hidden under the rug, because they were told not to say anything. And then as they became adults, the soul began to leak out. I think Pastor Gail talked about leaking earlier. The soul began to leak out and began to affect her now. And she doesn't know how to deal within the hidden scars, and will affect others if she tells. So that goes back. That's my question. Do we have to deal, Apostle Sharon, with that little boy or that little girl, and we're now 40, 30? Do we still have to deal with that child in us?
Most definitely. Again, with my 20 years or so of counseling, I have done exactly as Reverend Gail said, that she sat down and spoke to that little girl. That guest that you were talking about, that 40-some-year-old woman who was molested at 7 or whatever, she experienced trauma. It's mental injury. It's injury to the mind. It's injury. And just like if the 7-year-old had been attacked by, say, her brother, and he broke her leg, more than likely her mother would have taken her to the hospital to be attended to for that physical injury. But a lot of times in these situations, these children are not, the injury to the mind, to the mental capacity, is not attended to. And so what you do, you leave a person, or that woman was left in her 7-year-old injured mental state. And so what happened is that affects now, because the mind is a part of the soul. Now that is an injury to the soul. And what happens is when things like this happen, people become arrested in their development. They're growing, their physicality, they're growing, they're getting all of the body parts that they should get as an adult. But from a soulish standpoint, they are not properly developing. They're arrested in their development. They are still the 7-year-old child that was molested, having an unresolvedness to the thing that was happened. They were injured in their mind. They were injured mentally. Imagine if you broke your leg and nobody ever dealt with that. What would you end up doing? Probably having a limp, probably walking funny, or something like that. There would be some result of an unattended physical injury. Well, the same thing occurs when no one attends to the psychological injury caused by trauma. So the host, she did right. Take her back, allow her to deal with this. Somebody help her deal with it, the emotions behind it, the things that she didn't understand about it, the fear that she dealt with as a result. And a lot of times people do not properly attend to the people of God. I have heard stories like you would not believe of the trauma, the psychological injury. Some of it has happened in the church. A host of it has happened in the family, and we let people shout over it. I don't let people shout over when you know they got emotional problems. So now you got a 7-year-old. She's 7 in her emotions.
Yeah.
7 in her soul, but she's 47 in her age.
In a body.
And now the 7-year undeveloped child enters into other relationship. She don't even know how to cope like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we got to deal with, I said to some people, I was saying the church had better be prepared to deal with the trauma of COVID. I said, there's a trauma associated to this stuff. You know, we wearing masks and different things, but there's trauma, there's fear attached to it, and all of this stuff. And we have to be, there are people who have family members that died and they couldn't even couldn't even have funerals. They can't visit them. You got people in hospital. Imagine the trauma of being in a hospital, put in a COVID ward by yourself. You got to talk to your family on FaceTime, praying that you don't be put on a vent. You know what I'm saying? And can't connect. That's trauma.
That's trauma.
And that's a psychological injury that even the person that get over COVID still has that injury, that mind and that mental capacity must be healed.
Pastor Will, can I just say one thing? So I said that every scar has a story, right? I remember I asked someone for a recommendation. I needed a recommendation for something. It was something that had to do with church. And when they gave me the letter back, they said, read it, you know, and type it up. They had just written it out. And when I read it, they were telling my story of my addiction story.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
In the letter that I needed to recommend, they felt like they needed to reveal that about me. Well, I rewrote the letter the way it was supposed to be, gave it back to them and said, you can't tell my story.
Yeah.
Like I tell my story. Matter of fact, you're getting it all wrong. Because if somebody read this letter, they would think I got clean last year when I've been clean at that time, almost 25 years. No, you can't tell my story. It's my story to tell.
Yeah.
So going back to what Jackie said about the ways we have our homes, and our traditions and our families have shut our mouths. It has shut our mouths, right? And it has taken our stories and pushed those stories down because they don't want us to tell, because it'll bring, because sometimes it points back to the family. Come on here, somebody. It's going to point back to somebody
in the family.
It's going to point back to somebody in the family. So we have stuffed our stories. We have shut our mouths. But my grandmother used to say, tell the truth and shame the devil.
Yeah.
So I tell my own story. So that if anybody want to come out of the cracks and out of the dark and out of wherever they want to come from and want to tell my story, excuse me.
Yeah.
But I've already told my own story, and I can tell my story today without weeping.
Yeah.
Because my soul has been healed.
Absolutely.
That little girl I left behind, and the hopes and dreams, and the whole, it's a whole story behind that. But I have been healed of that, because guess what? All that I thought was wasted time, here it is. All of the wounds and scars that I thought was wasted time, God has redeemed that time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And has taken that time, and God uses everything in my story today for his glory.
Absolutely.
To help somebody else. Look, I can look at another woman and tell that she's in domestic violence. Something in my spirit connects. Why? Because I've been there.
Yeah.
Something connects with me when someone is going through substance abuse addiction. I can't just kick them out the church. I can't just say, why don't they go on and get better? Why they keep going back using over and over again? Because people don't. I understand why they keep going back. So I'm going to keep reaching for them. I'm going to keep going for them. I'm going to keep praying for them, because their story is my story.
Right.
But sis, you have compassionate ministry now, and you have not forgotten your lost places.
Absolutely.
You're not there, but you have not forgotten what it was like to be there. And that makes your ministry more compassionate. And that's
all these years later.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You both of you have phenomenal stories, and thank you for your transparency tonight. I believe that, as my apostle said, your stories will help someone else on a path to be healed. Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. Give us 5 minutes, and I promise we'll be done, because we're going to have last remarks from Reverend Gail and Apostle Sharon. But I don't do this for everybody. I do it for some people, but I don't do it for everybody. But I will put you on the spot, both of you, and ask you if you would please come back another time, back to self-checkout. We got to have you back.
Absolutely.
Most definitely.
Wonderful, wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, you all have really, those of you who are viewing, you have been so great, so wonderful. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for, dialoguing along with us. Before we get out of here, as you can see now scrolling across the screen, if you would like to be a blessing to Willie Taylor Ministries, you can do so the 3 ways that you see there on the screen. I don't want to talk about that any further. You can see it. But I do want to say this before we're going to hear from Pastor Gail and then Apostle Sharon, and then we're gone. I want to say to each and every one of you that are viewing tonight, those of you that will view the replay, I want to say to you that there is help available. There's help available. And if you have to, no matter how old you are now, if you have to go back and get that little boy, if you have to go back and get that little girl and talk to him, talk to her, and, bring them up to speed, so to speak, go back and tell that little person, that's you, that it's okay now. You can be healed now. The scar has healed. It's no longer bleeding. Deliverance is available. Help is available. Healing is available.
Yes.
And you don't always have to get it through the church, but that's a good place to start. I recommend that everybody, because I believe that tonight there is something in somebody that's watching this broadcast tonight. I believe that something was pricked in you that reminded you of a scar. And if you're still hurting about it, won't you go to God with it? Go to God in prayer about it. I want you to know that I can speak for them. I'm saying it. You can reach out to Reverend Gail. You can reach out to Apostle Sharon. You can reach out to me. I want you to know that we are available and we are safe places. We will talk to you. We will pray with you. We will get you the resources that you need. If you do need therapy, it's okay. I have a therapist too. It's okay. But I want you to know that the scars that no one can see, that you still hurt about, that you still hurt from, those of you who still suffer from the I'm okay syndrome, like myself, I still go through that from time to time when I'm really not okay. I want you to know, I'm telling you that it's okay not to be okay. Have your moment. Have it. You're human and it's okay. But at the end, when you get through having that moment, don't forget that greater is he that is in us.
Hallelujah.
And he that's in the world. I want you to know tonight that regardless as to what your scar is, if it's depression, if it's rejection, if it's abandonment, if it's grief, whatever your scar is, I want you to know that God is greater than your scar. And he wants you to be whole. And as Apostle Sharon said, whole is the goal.
Is the goal.
So before we go, I want to hear Reverend Gail leave us with something.
Sure. I just want to say, first of all, thank you for allowing me to be a part of this discussion. It has been wonderful. And I just want to say to those of you who may be listening right now that one of my favorite scriptures is Psalm 147:3. And it says, he healeth the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Hallelujah. I need you to know that there is healing for your broken heart. The enemy, his job, his assignment is to cause us to believe or make you think that you are alone, you are by yourself in your circumstance, that your heart will forever be broken, that nobody wants you anymore, that you'll never overcome, that you'll always be where you are. But I came to release a word to you right now in the name of Jesus, that not only will you survive this thing that you're in, hallelujah, but you will thrive in it. You will thrive in such a way that your life will give God the glory. You will survive and you will thrive in a way that you will be whole in ways that you never thought you would be whole. You have a picture of wholeness in your mind, but I need you to let you know that God has another dimension of wholeness available for you that you can't not even imagine. Eyes have not seen, ears have not heard, neither has it entered into your mind the things that God has for you. So I want to say, behold, woman of God, behold, man of God, rise up, tell your story. Tell your story. Jesus often sent people back. He would tell some people, don't say nothing, but others he would send back to tell the story. Tell your story and watch somebody be healed. And as you tell it, you will be made whole in the process, because as my big sister said, whole is the goal.
Thank you, Reverend Gail. Apostle Sharon, leave us with something.
Amen. I want to say to those that have listened to us on tonight, do understand that your soul, that part of you that you can't see, you are a triune being, your body, soul, and spirit. There's a part of you that is your soul that's trying to make a journey back to its maker. And John said in 3 John, we know it so well, he said, beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper, be in health, even as thy soul prospereth. That word prosperous right there has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with doing well along the way. And so I would say to you, as we go through these things in life, life happens to us all. Take care of your soul. Realize that there is a bishop of your soul, and that is Jesus Christ. He's a lover of your soul. The Bible tells us he that wins souls has to be wise. And I would say to you, look at your soul the same way you would look at your physical body. If your physical body has an ailment, you would go to a doctor, you go see a specialist, you run some tests, you do all those things. And look at your soul as a part of you that the spirit man of you that got saved, but it has to work. Salvation has to be worked out through your soul. So you make sure that everything that is in your spirit man that is of God, that it makes its way to work out through your soul, the living you. And that's the part of you that even when the physical body dies, its earthly death, your soul is still trying to make its way back to its maker. So make sure that you take care of that part of you. Your soul is your mind, your will, and your emotion. Don't think that that part of you can be neglected and you can live right or live well. The next part of the scripture says, for I rejoice greatly when the brethren came and testified of the truth that is in thee, even as thou walkest in truth. So let's get rid of the lie that says I'm okay when I'm not okay. Expose your very being to the truth. David said he realized that God desired truth in the inward parts. And he said, in the hidden parts, make me to know wisdom. Start realizing, be wise enough to know this is not good for my soul. This is not good for my soul. I need help with my soul, my mind, my will, and emotion. So I say to you again, don't leave your soul behind as you continue to walk this thing out in God. Stay in sync. Let your soul be just as well as every other entity of the triune you. God bless you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies. Thank you all for joining. Self-checkout will not be on next Tuesday because the Frontline Volume 4 will be airing next Tuesday night. We'll be talking about the evolution of gospel music. And I have some heavy hitters, man, coming on next Tuesday night. You'll hear more about that tomorrow. But I do want you to know that Reverend Gail and Apostle Sharon will be back on self-checkout soon and very soon. Self-checkout will be back though on November 24th, and I have the ladies, the hosts of the book. Oh my God, Dr. Nancy Murphy, Tabitha Johnson, and Melanie Stewart. All three of them will be right here Tuesday, November 24th, and we're going to be talking about meddling parents, parents who get all up in your grown-up business. That's going to be good. Thank you all again. Thank you, Reverend Gail. Thank you, Apostle Sharon. All of you from Facebook, Periscope, Twitter, and YouTube, thank you. We'll see you guys next week. And until we do come back, take an honest look at what's in your hearts, your minds, and your spirits. This is Self-Checkout, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.